Alright, hello party people. So today we're going to look at the surprisingly good but not superbly written Kraven the Hunter movie. I just finished watching this. I found it very cheap to rent on Prime. I'm actually very impressed with Aaron Taylor Johnson, the stunt work in this movie. Some of the effects, some of the thinking that went into this movie actually deeply impressed me. And I will recommend this movie. It's cheap, and honestly, I really wish they were going to make a sequel, but I suspect that's not in the cards. But they did great work setting up a sequel. And, the hero goes from hero to anti-hero. Fairly short order towards the end of the film, but it's still really well done. I'm very impressed with it. So, let's see if I can make this work properly. Drop this one. Okay, so, so I know one thing I'm going to have to do. So, that's going to have to be made to fit the screen a bit better. That'll do. Okay. Okay, so here we've got a very dark image, and it's something I'm actually kind of impressed with videography-wise. They go out of the way to make it a very dark movie to start, which makes sense given the tone of the movie and the particular character under discussion. But this is one of the earliest shots in the film, and it then moves to this shot, which irritated me because everything with blue filter. But in this case, it makes sense. They're in a winter environment, which gives you a bluer light, and they transition from late night to early morning. I'm okay with that. Downside. They, I didn't keep the this other screenshot that I had from inside the prison. Anyway, where the blue filter continues. As you can kind of see in the corner of this as well. This is actually a later shot. But talking about the earlier shot that I just had up, there were some very good expectation subversion moments here, because from the trailer, none of this was really expectable. You didn't expect him to be a particularly thinking sort of character. And he is. This initial opening shot, opening sequence, the opening, is not only a great introduction to the way they're going to characterize this character, Kraven, but it's a great little bit of almost a spy thriller, infiltration, intrigue sort of deal. There's a couple of really good moments. I don't want to spoil everything. There's a couple of really good moments when he first gets into the prison. He has a confrontation with his roommate, which kind of... He would come off cocky, except Aaron Taylor Johnson did a great job playing this character as confident rather than cocky. There's some great show-don't-tell stuff. There's a prison yard sequence, which really highlights, hints at more than anything, his strength and speed. And this is an enhanced character, to use the Marvel terminology. He's a superhero. Well, he's a super being. Hero might be a bit of a stretch, given what happens later on down the line. There is a predictable bit of confrontation, dialogue-wise, with the target that he's trying to get to inside this prison. But it's predictable done right, because it plays on the rule of cool, and if you're going to have an epic hero, you need to make sure he's actually fucking epic. And he is in that scene. The rest of the movie, there are points where the movie falls apart on the epic stuff. The way Aaron Taylor Johnson moves in this movie is fucking incredible. And I'll come back to that. And that really speaks to not just him, but to the talent of the people who were making this movie. Anything else on this page? The introduction of Calypso happens not long after this, and it's not good. It's clearly contrived. There's a lot of hoodoo mumbo-jumbo stuff. I kind of understand why, because they had to have the connection between the two characters, Calypso and Kraven. They had to make it happen in a kind of unfortunately kludged together kind of way, which is fair. I mean, Calypso, as minor a character as Kraven is in the Spider-Man mythos, Calypso is even more minor, even less well known. I will say there is an absolute badass moment where just after this escape, Kraven is running from prison guards directly into the teeth of a fucking blizzard. And my first thought, and that's a Siberian blizzard for the record, my first thought was, well, that's a bad fucking choice. Turned out not to be so bad a choice, but also he took a note from Batman's repertoire and used a bit of prep time. It's actually pretty slickly done. I actually really did enjoy this movie. This is a scene from Inside the Blizzard, where they first show the only real outward sign of his power, other than things he can do, is that every now and again his eyes will go Predator yellow. Which, not the Arnold Schwarzenegger Predator yellow, I mean like hawks and wolves and big cats Predator yellow. But it's subtle, but it's very, very noticeable. Let me see. Yeah, the personality, the way that Aaron Taylor Johnson, the way he inhabits this character, it's probably some of the best acting I've seen in a superhero movie, and it's really unfortunate that it was in this one, because it's a good movie, but it just did not reach people at the box office. This is actually, and I will say it's a very, very good comic book adaptation, without being particularly faithful to the source material, which, to be fair, is thin and sparse, so understandable. And really, it gave the movie makers a big amount of freedom, and they did the right things with it. Let's see here. This is the opening title. It's simple. There's no creatures screaming over it. There's no growling, nothing like that. It's just simple, straightforward. That's fine, right? Then there's a very extended flashback sequence, and I mean extended flashback sequence. I think it went on for better part of 15-20 minutes at least, which is fine. It was the origin story where he meets Calypso. All this sort of stuff gives you a bit of background about Kraven's dad, played by Russell Crowe, in not one of his best roles, one of his best performances. The sense I have is that this film was being made about the same time as The Pope's Exorcist, and I think Crowe really put a lot more of his dramatic energies, let's say, into The Pope's Exorcist, because he's clearly trying to chew scenery here, and it's just not working. And the absolutely horrible fake Russian accent he uses, yeah. I don't know if it would have been the director or the production team's choice, or Crowe's himself, but the accent is very thick, and it doesn't work, to say the least, but it's very difficult to believe that Russell Crowe is a Russian. Whereas if he had used something a little less pronounced, it would not be quite so bad, you know? And that was me doing a bad Russian accent. And I still think I did a slightly better job than Russell Crowe. To be fair, I don't have nearly his acting experience, so I don't know. Maybe he just made a bad choice. It happens. Let's see here. Yeah, the flashback origin section is very extended. I understand why it's very extended, because it introduces pretty much every character in the movie that matters, with the exception of the foreigner, who I don't know where he came from, but it's an interesting choice. Let's see. Yeah, immediately after this scene here, this one right there, sorry, there, immediately after that scene, Kraven takes a literal hero's journey, basically to some place where him and his family used to camp. It's an interesting choice to call it a camp, considering it's in a geodesic dome, but hey, whatever. Let's see. Yeah, the flashback ends with him killing some trophy hunters, and I understand, though it's a recurring theme, and it does kind of make a bit of sense when you tie it into some of the things that are said to him. The dialogue isn't great in any part of this movie, but there are really good tie-ins in the dialogue. So, yeah. Yeah, there's a point where he kills some trophy hunters, and I would suspect the production team, and certainly a lot of people, would think that it was about hunting in general. I think it's more about waste. But I don't know the politics of the producers, of the production team. I don't know if that was what they were attempting to portray, that hunting is bad, period. You know, my father taught me that if you go hunting, you take every part of the animal you can use. So, right, you don't just hunt for sport. That's always been what I was taught. So, over and over and over again, I wrote the words "good action" in this little scripting, note-taking thing that I did. I did mention earlier that there were some subtle power effects. The eyes that we just saw. But later on, there's almost like a hawk vision sort of thing. And other than that one really effects heavy moment, or those effects heavy moments, there's not a lot of effects in this. I suspect a lot of the gunshots are CGI, the muzzle flashes and things like that. But one of the things I really, really enjoyed about that is that it's using CGI where it's necessary. It looked like a lot of what Taylor Johnson did in terms of moving around and things like that. It looked like there was a fair bit of wire work, but it was really well done. And if you didn't know it was wires, and I'm not even 100% sure it's wires because it looks so natural. Now, granted, some of the stuff he does is clearly humanly impossible, but it's a superhero movie. And it's done, I'm sorry, but this is done really well. I really enjoyed this movie. There's a few really interesting references to the Spider-Man mythos in this. There's one moment where you see, and the only reference to it is a Daily Bugle banner across the top of a web page. Perfect. Yeah, another thing too with Russell Crowe is he did play very over-the-top mean dad. I mean, he was hateable enough anyway, but hammer the point home, sure. Though it did kind of start to slide into soap opera melodrama territory at a few points. I did love how they updated the world of, like, the environment that he's in from just, you know, random Russian villain of the week or month in the case of comics to, you know, there's an actual Russian mobster backstory. There's lots of Russian mafia ties. There's an entire underworld that he's involved with. And it's none of it is told to you. No, sorry, that's wrong. There's a few points where there are some minor tells, but there's an awful lot of show. And that's one thing that this movie did right. They did show, not tell. Uh, there's a great chase scene, and I think... Oh yeah, here's the literal hero's journey. The great chase scene, and it was a great chase scene. The stunts, the choreography, everything was really well done, but there was a lot of very manly screaming. And, you know, to be fair, the way I would describe this is Sony creating a Wolverine character, and they did a very good job with it. One thing I will point out, too, I mentioned the manly screaming. There's a moment not long after this scene where Taylor Johnson's character himself mentions there was a lot of screaming. So it's a moment where you go, oh, that's pretty funny. And I really hope the production team put it in on purpose, but I suspect they didn't. There's a few different times where Dimitri is referred to as a very changeable character or chameleon-like. So I like that. They kind of drove that in. Over and over, I said I was impressed by things like that. There's repeated references to the Jackal Miles Warren as a doctor who does things. When they first started talking about this doctor in New York who could enhance people, I thought, oh, okay, well, they're talking about the Power Broker. No, they were not talking about the Power Broker, because the Power Broker has been mentioned in the MCU, and if I had been thinking at the moment, I was enjoying the film, if I had been thinking a little deeper at the moment, I would have realized, no, there's no way in hell they're talking about the Power Broker, because he's actually featured in the MCU. I believe he's mentioned in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier show. But they did come out and directly say, yeah, Miles Warren was the guy. And he's the one who empowered both the Rhino and later another character. And I will tell you who that is, but not right away. And I do love the way they set up that second character and the way they portrayed him on screen. If you look at his comic book appearance, you wouldn't really think it would transfer well to the screen, but my God, they did a good job. Let's see. There's a moment where, and I believe it's the next one. No. Is it this one? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I had this one for talking about when Crow was trying to chew the scenery and descending into melodrama. That's kind of this shot. This one here. This is, it's an unfortunate choice. It's a great tension breaker. It's a funny, fucking hilarious sequence. And it does set up something later. But it breaks the tension at the point where the tension should be being allowed to build. And I get it. This was probably an insert later sort of deal. But really, this could have been something where, well, I mean, in the narrative, if it had to be fit in somewhere, because otherwise you'd end up with a Deus Ex Machina. Yeah, I mean, here is good, but it did really break the tension down. That said, it did show how fun-loving the Kraven character is. How much fun he's actually having being who he is. So it's enjoyable that way. What is my next stream? Oh, yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, I did say that, and I had to write it down. I do love that the Rhino carries a fucking rhino. That's a Mateva Rhino. Yeah. I'm very happy about that. That's perfect firearms placement. Running away in a straight line is a bad idea. This is one of the few moments where they fell into the, oh, we do cliched Hollywood things here kind of mindset. Why, if you have a helicopter dropping what amounts to flares, but they're some sort of fire bomb sort of deal, if that helicopter is flying in a straight line, why would you run parallel to the helicopter? Yes, you're fast, but you're not that fucking fast. I did point out that I had to do some research on Calypso. I had to look her up because I had no idea who she was. And I'm very impressed with how well she was essentially modernized. Because Calypso is another character that dates from about the same time as Kraven. And along the same theme, where they didn't really worry too much about who these people were. They just threw them into the story. One of the things that bothered me not long after this, and is this the one? No. This did bother me too. I was like, well, how the hell did she end up with a second vial if her grandmother had died not long after giving her the first vial? It's because her grandmother taught her the recipe. Okay, fine. Let's kill this one. But yeah, we'll come back to this for just a second. The thing that bothers me here too is there's a point where Kraven is killed off screen. And earlier on, and this is one of the reasons why I have an issue with some of the writing in this, there's a point where the Rhino says, "Bring me his body." And then they fuck off without ever picking up the body. And all I can think is, did the writers forget that he had said that? Did the actor not remember to point that out to the actor? You know, sometimes actors, they'll hear things. Look at Sam Witwer. All right, Sam Witwer is a great example of a continuity-aware actor. There's a great short online of Witwer pointing out to Dave fucking Filoni, who's supposed to be the biggest Star Wars geek going, that a scene that he had written was not appropriate based on continuity that had been established in the Lucasfilms. So, yeah, sometimes an actor should speak up. Now, I will say the guy who played the Rhino, good actor. Weirdly written character. And this is another example of how, you know, Taylor Johnson's Kraven is being funny. I also love the callback to comic book language. Instead of saying, "fuck, you're heavy," or "damn it, you're heavy," or something like that, he goes, and it's really played for kind of innocent, straight laughs. "Gosh, you're really heavy." It did make me chuckle, though. The thing that, this is another issue I have with the writing, is this line here, "The video of me, how did you get it?" He had no idea the Rhino had a video of him. At no point in the dialogue does anybody tell him that there's a video of him. So, I don't know if this was another, maybe there was something cut that would have explained it. I don't know. There's a scene where he causes a stampede that's an actual reused shot, and it's very obviously reused because the hero buffalo at the front of the herd looks exactly the same as one that was earlier, and it's no. There's a 16-year gap there. It should not be the exact same buffalo looking the exact same. That's a bit of CGI unfortunateness. Yeah, the gosh, I did make a note next to that. That's good, actually good fight banter. It's not Spider-Man level, but it's approaching Spider-Man level, which is good. During the stampede scene, the Rhino's tracksuit wearing black English henchman, number 1 henchman, just goes out like a complete chump, which is good because he was the butt of a joke earlier, and nobody really, he didn't need to be in the movie. So I don't know if that was, I don't know what the deal was with that. But yeah, I did say it was fitting considering he was completely unimportant to the story. Let's see. Yeah, I did make a note. How did he know to ask this question? There's no, as far as I saw, there's no reason that he should have been able to ask this question, because he should never have known there was a video of him. There is an epilogue. The irony of the character being set up to be the chameleon singing Black Sabbath's Changes is pretty damn sweet. Dimitri does show up as the chameleon. I won't show you what he looks like, but it is a very good chameleon review. And they did say over and over and over, they kind of heavy-handed the hints about him being the chameleon. Well, no. Actually, I don't think they really heavy-handed him. I think it's just that I cottoned on to the first one and I honestly thought that he would be revealed as the chameleon in a sequel. I'm glad they didn't. I'm glad they did it in this movie, because we're probably not getting a sequel. But, yeah, amazingly well done. There's a very good costume reveal at the end. And it's the Kraven costume. And I'll just blow this back up really quickly. Give me one moment. That should fit the screen. There we go. There's a moment at the very end of the film. This is right before the fade to black. And his father's, and Russell Crowe's horrendous Russian accent, doing an voiceover explaining how he and his son, Russell and Kraven, are really the same person, and they're very much the same. And there's a line earlier on where Dimitri tells him that he's just a trophy hunter as well, and it's really, really well done. The thing that's kind of slightly creepy about this is the shirt that he's wearing, the vest, is actually made out of the skin of the lion that kind of gave him his powers. So it's a bit creepy, but not creepy. Yeah. Anyway, I have to say, I really did enjoy this movie. The last thing I'll say about it... Okay. I do like to give out of 10 recommendations. Dialogue, it's a 3. Hard 3 out of 10. Continuity, there's a couple of bad spots, and I did point them out. But that's still up around an 8, 9. The way that Aaron Taylor-Joy obviously got into shape and obviously wanted to be this character is great. I think the very last thing I'll say, if by some miracle someone decides to make a sequel to this, I will absolutely support it, especially if it's the same production team, and I will absolutely follow this production team if I can. More than anything else, I think, I can't give it a 9. I'd like to give it higher. I'm thinking 8 out of 10, 7 to be really fair. Splitting the difference, 7.5, because it's got a great setup for a sequel. There's great action sequences in this. It's got great setup for a sequel without obviously saying we want to make a sequel. And really doesn't necessarily need a sequel. I'd like to see them do something else with Kraven in the Sony Spider-Verse. He's not on the level of Venom, obviously. But, I mean, this movie kicked the shit out of Madam Web. Let's be real. Other than that, yeah. I mean, I recommend see this movie if you can see it cheap, which is exactly what I did. Other than that, I hope you're doing well. I hope you continue to do well. And as always, rise and rise again until lambs become lions. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Hello, party people. So I'm attempting to make a go of this whole content creation thing, and I could really use your support, either monetary or, just moral. Though by moral I mean please like and share, comment, send it out to your friends, your frenemies, your family, and your foes. In any case, another way you can support me, and I am changing my merch store over to Fourth Wall, which is why it still says Redbubble in the bottom. You also have the option to send me a tip on Ko-Fi. But in the meantime, until I get the Fourth Wall up, sorted, ready to go, I will be keeping the Redbubble store open for a little while. Some of the designs that are in the Redbubble store will not be repeated on Fourth Wall. In fact, I am considering moving to a somewhat more limited run sort of system for some of these designs. Some of them cease to be topical after a while. I still have a number of the... let's call it the disease with no name designs. In any case, I do appreciate any support you guys give me, even if it is simply sharing it or even liking and commenting. Every comment I see, I will respond to. Other than that, as always, I hope you're well and continue to be well. Rise and rise again until lambs become lions. Bye-bye.